All right.
And here we go. Make sure it's actually streaming, which, yes, we are. Great. Hello,
All
everybody
right.
out there. I have a guest today. My guest, would you
Uh,
introduce yourself?
all right. This is the Cardinal Conservative. Glad to be here on Mandatory's channel.
Carnal, that's
This is my second time on here.
I don't remember you being on before.
I think I've been on once before, but they had to take the stream down.
No, that was on your channel, bro.
That
I'm
was on
telling you,
my
it was.
channel. Oh,
I
okay.
managed to
All
get a
right.
copy of
Well
that one.
then. All right. Well then, it's this is my first time here. Welcome.
Carnal Conservative. That's a very interesting name. Would you care to explain that?
Sure. It's actually part of my religious beliefs. I am an out Christian. It's not a secret for anyone who's been on my channel for any length of time. Carnal means it's how do I put this? It's a hearkening to back when there's a scripture that goes, "For the natural man is an enemy to God, unless he is, or until he is enticed by the promptings of the Holy Spirit." And carnal conservatism latches onto that enticing notion.
So you
And
talk about
it's
sex.
our, well, not just sex. I'm talking about sex appeal. I'm talking about the responsibility of Christians to make their lifestyle and following the Christian paradigm and making sure that they are putting as much of an attractive spin on it as possible. And there's far too much in Christianity this notion that suffering through life is the best way to do it, and it's really not. If you go through the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's actually no indication that your life is supposed to be full of this empty, vacuous, suffering life, and that's somehow going to lodge you somewhere higher on the heavenly scale. That's that teaching is not found in Scripture.
I never saw it.
It's actually a perversion. It's what?
I never saw that anywhere except maybe Peter, but Peter was kind of a weirdo.
No, but Peter was fine. The one that trips everyone up is Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. You're correct.
Yeah,
Paul.
but Paul's the one who's tripping everyone up with this. And to understand Paul, Paul was a lawyer, and it shows. And Paul's tactic and life story is literally he made it his life's mission to persecute Christians, and because he worked for the Jewish organization called the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin would send him out to find Christians and persecute them and stone them and make their lives miserable and potentially end them. And then he had a conversion event where Paul realized, holy crap, I have to use these autistic powers for good. And that's essentially what he was. He was the supreme autist of Scripture who had to use, whose primary job at the beginning was to use his powers of autism to take Christians who weren't technically breaking the law of Moses and turn them into heretics through the powers of autism and argument. And he had to flip around. And so when he writes some of his letters to whatever congregation, it's very easy within the legalese to look at Paul and go, I don't know what the fuck this means. I'm going to interpret it to whatever I want it to mean. And that's why you have a lot of disagreements in terms of what is legitimate and what is not in terms of Christian doctrine. So blame Paul.
Oh, I would have anyway. All right.
Troll is here. Hey, Troll. Who's Mandy?
How's it going, Pearl?
Anyway, okay. So, introductions and a quick update for those of you that have been following the bag project. The first Molly has been successfully tack stitched on. All I have to do is copy that 3 more times and then take it to a professional and have it properly mounted. And then I gotta do the mollies for the water. Now this actually has a pillow in it right now because I needed it to be puffed up so I could do the stitching, the tack stitching. All right, let's get into at least the first subject. Karn,
Yes.
are you in any way, shape, or form familiar with today's subject? At least the opening subject.
Not really, and we didn't touch on it pretty much at all, except for I think you gave me a name, and that was it.
In Japan, there's something called a pod hotel, and I wish I thought to get the pictures, but I didn't. And oh well. What it is a bank of usually about 2 rows of 5 each boxes. They're about yay big by yay big, so between 3 and 4 feet wide and high, and about 6 feet deep. And back when Japan was having the big economic boom, and people were working like 20 hours a day, they'd be too exhausted or it'd be too late to get back to their housing outside of town. So they'd rent this pod overnight. They'd get a night's sleep. Next morning, they'd get a shower. They'd put a outfit on and go back to work. And they'd do it for another 20 hours. And then Friday or Saturday night, I think in Japan it's Saturday night. Weekends begun. You go get drunk. You've worked 20 hours. Now you're going to drink for another 20 hours. And you're too drunk to go home, so you just go back to your pod and you stay there overnight. I remember hearing about these in the very, very late 80s or very, very early 90s and thinking, gee, that would be a great model for a homeless shelter. It's safe, it's secure. You can close your door, lock it, and get a shower and all those other things. Now, this is back before I understood homeless shelters too much, but I thought this would be a really good model. Tulsa has like a micro hotel, but smaller, and he's actually exactly right. It's each pod is just barely big enough that you could fit a casket in it, and actually, I think that's the dimensions they based it on. Is could you fit a casket in here? Yes or no? And that's an appropriate measure.
Depressing. That is depressing as fuck.
No. If it's big enough to hold a casket, it's big enough to hold a human reasonably comfortably.
Well, yes, obviously, but I mean, is there like a common bathroom facility in these pod houses? Okay, all right.
It's barrack style, heads, showers, common space. So you want to wear shower shoes. A few years back when I actually started Pod homepage, my concept was that the ground level would be the mess deck and the lobby, and in the back would be the galley, and off to the side of the lobby would be the tables for the support agencies. You know, if you have a drug problem, you can go to table number 1. If you have an employment issue and you just can't get a job, you can go to table 2. If you're having car problems, because I know one guy who was homeless because he had a car problem. Oh no. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still going. I think.
Um,
I can hear you. Are you still? Are we still live? Are we
yeah,
still
we're
good?
still live. We're still live.
Awesome.
If you have a car problem, you could go to table number 3, so on and so on. The idea is to get everybody who does actually want to get off the streets into a place where they could start getting help. At least get a
Okay.
roof over their head, 2 meals a day, and then you leave these tables open. And when they realize, my drug problem is the reason why I'm in here, they can go to the drug table and say, hey, I think I need some help.
Yeah, and
Um,
you know, have I don't know if this is too personal a question. Have you ever been homeless before?
yes,
Okay. So, what percentage of the homeless population would you say is, shall we say, redeemable? Because I myself was homeless for about 3 months at around,
mentioned that.
around 2009, 2010 ish, in that ballpark area. It actually might have been 2011. But anyways,
My experience,
I was homeless. I was homeless during that time, and so most of the people that I met who were homeless, either incredibly young, had all of their best years ahead of them. They were just at the bottom, and they were just going to spring back up. The second category was literally the hopeless, the institutionally homeless.
yeah,
Um, so, how many people, from your experience, do you see as being uh, redeemable?
okay. Well, before I answer that, I am going to point out I was homeless in Salem, Oregon for about a year and a half, actually a little bit over that. Um, so very different environments, but I would say about 75%, if they had even a chance to recover, uh, but for a drug problem, would be able to get off the streets. A third would have been able to get off the streets if they had that chance. Um, and there's a quarter of them, the drug problem were no, and some of them did. They didn't want to get off the streets. They were happy there. That's their life.
Yeah.
And great, you stay there. I mean,
Okay.
my big problem was that first, last, and security deposit. I just couldn't put it together with $200 weeks. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't help that my ex-wife had just completely emptied out my bank accounts and taken literally every penny, and then filed for divorce and changed the locks.
Yikes. Yeah. That'll screw any man over.
That's okay. Someday everybody's going to find out the whole truth about that story, and Little Miss can't be wrong. Well, we're going to find out what happens when she bangs her gong that time.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, about 75%. And what I honestly believe is if we open that door up and get that lobby open, after a couple of weeks of being there and having people talking about, I'm going to rehab and I'm doing great and I'm going to get out of here, shame is going to eventually catch up and say, hey, I really need to get out of here. I need to get my life together. Maybe I should go talk to that guy. Or,
I hear what you're saying, Mandatory, and I think for most normal people, and even some of the dysfunctional ones, you might have a point. But I don't know if you've seen or if I'm gonna guess you've seen this and that you've at least experienced it, or you've because I know that you're not the kind of person who would participate in this, but the kind of person who would go to like a food bank or a food line and essentially just throwing shit all over the place, like the kind of people who, yeah, and I'm saying what, how do I say this without being a dick?
Just be a dick. I'm telling you, be a dick and say it.
There's absolutely no redemption for these people. Like there are some portions of the population that you cannot shame. You can't reason with. There's something missing from their makeup, from their I don't even know if it's their nurture or their nature, or if it's something, a fabric of this human being is missing to the point that they can no longer function in any society in any meaningful way.
I met that guy. My first day of trying to get off the streets myself, because I'd been there for like 6 months and this is getting ridiculous. I was actually told, go to this address, talk to this person, and he will start setting you up. And I walked in that door about 15 minutes before, 30 minutes, something like that, before I was supposed to be there. And I literally walked into the very tail end of a apparently pretty ugly fight. Like 3 or 4 people had been involved, and they're still bringing one guy down because he's getting flipped out, and they're trying to get him calmed down. The other guy apparently is on his way to the jail, and 2 of the others, the other 2 have been asked to leave, and if I understood correct, one of them was asked not to come back. And and this is my first fucking day. I literally had just walked in the door. I remember there was this guy, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere on earth other than here. And I looked to him and I said, "Is it always like this?" And he just nodded his head. Oh,
yep.
What did I walk in?
Well, what you walked into is a good Samaritan who's going to burn out and end up bitter and unhappy. Because that's what the people who are chronically homeless, let's make no mistake. Despite having been homeless myself for 3 months of my life, I would never give change to a homeless man.
Nope.
Would you?
I was there for 18 months, and the answer is no.
Okay. And most people who are, have never been in that situation, look at people like us and go, what the fuck is wrong with you? The answer is, we fucking been there. We know what it's like, and you don't hand change off to people who are trying to scrape themselves off from the bottom. They have to kick them. Look, if you're at rock bottom, the only place for you to go is back up, and the only reason you haven't kicked yourself back up is because A, you haven't had the chance, or B, you love it and you don't want to leave. So because I've been there, I am not going to waste my change on someone I know has the choice and has chosen to not make it, because they're either in one of those 2 camps. And I'll be honest, if you're someone who actually doesn't like being homeless, there's a significant chance that in the near future you will find a way to crawl out, and it's not going to be from me handing you change.
Yeah, well, my first step to crawling out was I got into a veterans homeless shelter, and it's this close. My name was so much like somebody else's. The guy that ran the facility almost told me no, because the other individual had some sort of criminal record that was an automatic no for being there. And I was like, because I told him I had been in a up at the VA hospital in the suicide ward. And I even told him that. He said, "Oh, I'm glad you're honest about that because, da da da. No, wait, that's not me, huh? Oh, sorry, wrong guy. Okay. Um, my real last name is a pretty common name in that area, and so he made he's got like 50 people on his desk, and he's got to pick one or two, and two of them just happen to have the same last name. Well, big surprise. That'd be like saying Smith almost anywhere else in the United States.
All right.
So anyway,
a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah, and that close. Hey, Luke. Luke is an old friend of mine. He's one of the few people I still like from the bathtub. And yes, troll, rough patches and homeless are not exactly the same thing. But rough patches can, homeless is intrinsically a rough patch. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether you were or not. Moving on. Yeah, the big thing is there is, we do have homeless shelters, and they're not safe. All right, I'm just going to say it the way it is. They're not safe. Years before,
no, they're not.
Years before I became homeless myself, I was being hired as security, or I was being looked at to be hired as security at a National Guard armory that was serving as a homeless shelter during bad weather periods. They needed 4 guards to house 50 people. What's that tell you?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that unironically.
Yeah, been there, done that. So they're really.
Right, I apologize. I'm going to be right back. I have to do an errand really quick, but I will join you in a moment.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, I was being interviewed for being a guard, and they needed 4 guards for 50 people, I think it was, at a National Guard armory. Okay, well, and this was seasonal only. That's a bad sign. I'm not even at the actual homeless shelter, and I walk into this fight that is still coming down. Pod hotel system is very safe. It's very secure. And because I know people are going to ask, I did the math one night. This was just after I had recovered from being homeless. I was traveling cross country for work related reasons. I stopped in a major hotel chain that's very, very cheap. So draw your own conclusions from there. And the space was big enough. I could have easily fit 10 pods in there. 15 if I went triple stack, which is what pod home is, at least right now, is envisioned as possibly going. And this was, I think, $50 a night. Well, 50 times 30 is something like 1,500. Okay, divided by 15 is 150 for a month stay. When I was homeless and working. Ironically enough, I was a security guard, and my main job was to chase out homeless people. I could still get $200 per month, easy, no problem. I was getting about $200 per paycheck, so half of my income would have gone to housing. Well, it'd be better than sleeping in my car, which is what I did a whole lot of. There's your math. And this was based on a very inefficient space use model of trying to convert this hotel into a pod hotel, not into a really efficient one that a pod hotel would have been built around. Troll says, if I ever had nowhere to go, I went to work. Hotels are a waste of money and were usually very far away. Troll, I couldn't go to work because there would be nobody there. I'd be chased out by the regular cops. And I know this because that actually happened one day.
All right, I'm back.
Okay. Did you hear the part about the math?
No, not about the map. I heard about you being chased out of your place of employment.
I did the math one day based on a single hotel room, and I was actually able to mathematically prove that yes, pod homes would be financially viable.
And how much would they cost per day?
Well, it's not a per day measure. It was a per month measure. 150.
Okay.
It's absolute
150
top.
a month?
150 a month. Absolute
okay.
Top. And it's not perfect. It's not intended to be perfect. That's a big thing. I've talked to Papa Carey about this from time to time. And, I know it needs an alarm clock. Maybe it needs a radio, a TV. We'll see. He's said that it needs to have Wi-Fi. What do you need Wi-Fi for? What do you really need Wi-Fi for? I'm asking you.
Well, and I'll be honest. Like Wi-Fi might be nice if you were, applying for jobs. Like if you're homeless, and you had that Obama phone, you had that, or you had another family plan that you were bumming on. But that's I don't know. For me, Wi-Fi is neither here nor there. There's so many plans where there's where most data plans in the United States are unlimited data plans. Like if you happen to be on a plan. So I'm kind of half in, half out on the Wi-Fi notion.
I'm okay. I'm all out because I could just see it. They get in there, they crawl into their pod, they start playing. What is it? Candy Crush, and they go 16 hours playing Candy Crush, and they starve to death in their box because they lost track of time. I've noticed this amongst homeless people is we had a tendency to lose track of time. There were a lot of people didn't even know what day it was. Just that I woke up this morning, I went to the park, panhandled for a couple hours, bought a pack of smokes, and came back. Oh, huh?
Damn.
Really? That's your life, huh? I never met one who didn't know how old they were, but I met quite a few who forgot that their birthday had coming up because they lost track of days.
Yeah. I was never that bad. I couldn't allow myself to let it get that bad. But yeah, that's. I also remember several homeless who clearly couldn't keep the days together, and you never know if that's because they can't keep track of time or because of copious drug use. Likely both.
At least a little bit of both.
Yeah, but no, I hear you. You're right. Fuck the Wi-Fi. Go to the goddamn library and get your shit together, motherfucker.
It's like on the play. You're looking for work? Okay, fine. There's a table that is actually set up just for people who actually do want to get to work, and they'll send you somewhere, and you'll work for 8 hours. And you might just be picking butts up off the side of the road in an orange vest. If people driving by think you're convict crew, or what is it? what is that one? Community
Oh,
service
I don't.
career. Community
Yes.
service. Well, so what? It's $8 per hour. Community service and scorn, but it's a real 8 hour, $8 an hour, which it was in Oregon at the time. Pearl, I have no idea what a
Yeah.
kindergarten is. Sorry. If you had the drug problem, go to the drug table and say, hey, I think I have a real problem. I also noticed the drug problems and the mental illness problems seem to be almost a 1-1 correlation. If you had a mental illness problem, you had a drug problem. If you had a drug problem, you had a
Yeah.
mental illness problem.
Yep.
I know there's some people
I
who
mean,
just have a problem, that's it. And I have a mental illness. I have PTSD. I don't have a drug problem. But me and that hypothetical other were absolutely the exceptions to the rule. Well
yeah.
over now.
You still there, man?
Yeah, I'm still here. I hear you.
Oh, okay. You cut out, and I thought that maybe I had lost the stream, but no. And you're absolutely right. And you're not allowed to say this.
I don't
You're
care.
really not allowed to point out that hey, there's a strong correlation between mental health and drug use, especially among the homeless. Might we look into this? And the answer is, of course, no,
Yes.
because autism.
Yep. Your autism. All right. Yes, absolutely look into it because I can guarantee you. Now, first of all, I cannot say how much of the mental illness is caused by the drug abuse. That's a real thing. You abuse the drugs for so long that your brains go. I can't say how
Yeah,
much of the drug abuse is related to the mental illness, self-medicating with meth mostly, and meth cut with fentanyl and pot and I know there's a whole lot of both involved. But if you treat these, you know, you could actually maybe start getting this person back into real society. And yes, it's going to suck. I was an alcoholic at one time. It took me over a month to finally get over the shakes. All right.
yeah,
My alcohol abuse was related to my PTSD. I was drinking myself to sleep. And then I realized I need to sober up. This is actually becoming a problem. It took me a couple months to put my head together to the point where I could start working on it. It took me a couple more months to get over the shakes. A month and a half, something like that, to get over the shakes. My PTSD started getting a little bit better right about that same time.
well, and that there's a part of your subconscious who realizes that you're being a fuck up,
Yeah.
and it kind of like it perpetuates the cycle. So as you kind of break that first chain, the one of two things happens. Either you break the first chain and you realize, oh, I need to break all the others, let's get at it, or holy fuck, I have all these other chains to break, just put me back in.
Well, and some people just go back in.
Yeah. And so you do need a strong support group to keep your head on and keep breaking the chains. Because if you don't, you'll just dive back in because you want to be comfortable. You want to be, you want that coping mechanism of, as you say, something basic like using alcohol to sleep. I mean, there are so many ways that addicts will rationalize their habit through things like that, and because it's easy, because it's something you don't have to think about, and yet when you first start breaking that chain, you go, oh, I'm actually supposed to have a life beyond this, and this is really unhealthy for me. And so, either the shame gets to you or the victory gets to you, and you have to decide which one gets to you first. And so how does this, here's my question is, how would you pay for, now I know that you said that for these pod rooms, it's going to cost like $150 a month just for them to house it.
Flag on the play.
Yeah.
That 150 is an absolute outrageously highest possible. All right. Based on what was going on
does that include all of the services?
I believe so. Yeah. Remember, a lot of those services are being subsidized at taxpayer expense. But the point is to get this guy back to being a taxpayer, so he's going to be subsidizing the next one.
Okay.
So,
right.
He's out picking cigarette butts off the side of the road for $8 an hour, and 20 minutes of that hour actually went into income tax anyway. So he's starting to subsidize it the first day he goes out that door.
Okay.
Now, I walked in.
That's actually not bad.
I would have been walking in already having a job, so I would have avoided that part. And I was only working part-time, so that doesn't help either. I would have already been subsidizing my own existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, 150 is absolutely the highest. And it's based on really an overpriced hotel room for a month divided by the absolutely bare minimum 10 I could have put in there, and in the least efficient manner. Put them in much more efficiently, and it'd be like half that, maybe. We could get that far down.
Okay. So you've already taken into account the pricing for water usage, electricity, other utilities, the servicing of the cost of the counseling.
Yes. And 90% of that math was done for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So just copy pasta.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right.
The real expense on that consideration is the 2 meals a month, or I'm sorry, 2 meals a day, and it is 2 meals a day, and that's it. Sorry, you're cut off. And the man hours for those tables, well, depending on how you do those tables, it might actually come down from there. Like Salem was such a small homeless community at the time. 2 tables probably would have been enough. And they would say, okay, well, I can set you up with an appointment. In my case, it was housing assistance. I could not get housing at the price point. Well, I couldn't get the first, last, and deposit together. Okay, well, I can set you up with, I forgot the name of the outfit. They eventually did send me to. I can set you up with such CARES. That was the abbreviation. I can set you up with CARES. You'll talk to Karen over at CARES. How is Tuesday at 0800 sound? Great, good. I have Tuesday mornings off. I'll be there.
All right.
And some of it is computer related, and some of it is just putting, like, you were down in Los Angeles. All right, you'd probably need 3 people for each table and 10 different tables to handle all of the load.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you'd have needed a lot more. Me, 2 tables tops. And And now you've got somebody who's been just a drain on everybody and damaged the quality of the environment, quality of life for everybody who isn't hurt, back into being a functional member of society. And a taxpayer, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, who are we going to get to pick up the project, and who's going to bankroll it?
That is a definitely interesting question. About 2 years ago, I reached out to a homeless veterans, no, a suicide prevention in veterans group, asking them, could you take a look at this? And they said, no, we won't touch it. Why not? Because it's not a nonprofit. Well, you're right. It's not a nonprofit. It's an advocacy. We don't take money in because I don't have millions of dollars to build the first pod.
Yeah.
I learned real quick, don't reach out to veterans groups.
Dang. Well, and it's actually a misnomer that just because it's a nonprofit doesn't mean it doesn't make money.
I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about tax law, but at least the money has to be accounted for, and do not play games with that money. IRS will throw you in prison just for a spite over a couple of dollars if you say you're nonprofit.
I mean,
hi, Buck.
My dude.
Buckle.
Goodwill is technically a nonprofit.
Yeah. So is the American Red Cross. And they have, a couple $1 million a year in actual profits.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a line. That's not a lie. That's not a bullshit story. If Goodwill was a for-profit company, I think they'd be in the Forbes 500 because that's how much money they make versus how many people they employ or whatever the 500 is based on.
Yeah.
And and that's not necessarily a bad thing, though. Okay,
No.
It means that they're successful at their business, and they could be doing more. We're going back to the Olstein argument, I guess. They could be doing more with that income, but at the end of the day, you can only dump so much money. I mean, Goodwill is supposed to help people who are indigent or homeless or very low income. How much can they actually do?
Well, when I say goodwill, I think you the goodwill industries is well, we're talking about goodwill. Goodwill is specifically an organization that you donate the stuff you no longer want to, so other people can buy at an extremely discounted price. That's it. That is all Goodwill is. And by the way, if you donate to Goodwill, they'll give you a nice receipt for your tax deductions for that year.
Yeah,
so
yes.
It's a nice idea, but I don't think Goodwill has any inherent impetus to actually care for the poor and the indigent. They're a middleman for America's unwanted stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I was mistaken about that part. So they're successful at their business.
No,
and
I'm not knocking it, but when you say that it's not a bad thing that they're good at their business or that their business is successful, I agree. I just don't agree because they could be better at it, or that they could serve better or serve more people or have a larger reach. I think it's a good thing that Goodwill is successful, because what it means is that there's a large market of Americans across the country who are willing to divest their old goods and pick up, or at least investigate things that people no longer want. And on the local level, Mrs. Carnell constantly shops around these no-buy groups on Facebook, where it's a bunch of moms. Make no mistake that there's hardly any sausage in these groups whatsoever. It's a bunch of moms who get together and say, I need to get rid of this. It works. Does anyone want it? And they collaborate, and they essentially communicate with one another. They go, okay, where does this belong? Where does it go? First come, first serve. And it's an insanely cooperative way of rehashing what Goodwill was supposed to do before the age of the internet. And so, yes, there's a big market for it, and I think there are healthier ways for that phenomena to express itself, and it might not be through the lens of the Goodwill stores themselves, if that makes sense.
I honestly, I have no on that. I got to interrupt you for a second. Said, I read somewhere, this is great, Sky Troll anti-drama, said, I read somewhere if Goodwill picked up all the guns, they could rule the world. There might be some truth to that. And Buckle Bunny, Buckle Bunny says, I donate to Salvation Army, but never the Red Cross. Red Cross will sell you a cup of coffee versus Salvation Army will give you one. My parents, but just before I was born, they needed some help. Dad was still active duty military. They needed some help getting back to the States for family related reasons. Salvation Army threw the ball away. They just totally fucked it up. As a matter of fact, the Navy itself had to step in and solve the problem that they also had helped to create by sending my dad where they did. Because his chief backed him up. That's the real reason. Moving on. The flash forward 23-ish, 22-ish years. My grandmother was sick. My folks contacted the Red Cross because this is what you're supposed to do. Contact the Red Cross if you have a family member in the if you're in the military and have a family member who's sick, or if you're trying to reach somebody in the military whose family member is sick, you contact the Red Cross and they'll contact your command. A couple of days later, they called up my command. They did talk to me. I went to my chief and said, my grandmother's sick. Here's the situation. No, that's not quite. No, yeah, that's right. I went to my chief. I told him, here's the situation. He said, okay, well, 2 days later, everything's okay. It's fine. You don't need to come racing home right now. No problem. We're underway for 3 days after that. I remember it was 3 days because I slept 2 days or 2 nights. That's a real number. Okay. I get called up to the radio room. I'm a seaman. I'm not even allowed in the radio room. I get called up there. I knock on the door, in XO, and the ET1 are in the radio room, of all places. I thought I was in deep shit because this is XO, and he usually handles the disciplinary.
Yep.
Yes. What's going on? Well, your grandmother is sick. No, my grandmother's not sick. She's recovered. Well, we're going to put you on the satellite phone, which is something I didn't even know existed back then. to call your folks and find out what's really going on. And they're sitting right there. I called them up. Dad tells me, no, this is the old thing. Don't worry about it. Everything's under control. Like, so she's fine. Everything's fine now. Can I go back to my watch? Yep. Go ahead, Seaman Carrie. And I went on back. It took them a week to not deliver the message. I just delivered a message.
Oh my God.
Yep. It took the Salvation Army a week to not deliver a message. And by the way, they are actually paid by Uncle Sam to deliver those messages. An outcropping of, I think, World War One.
Jeez.
Holy shit. She would have been dead by then if the problem had been what doctors thought it was. And they still didn't get it delivered. But I'm sorry, they eventually delivered it. Like 3 days after she should have been dead. 2 days after she should have been dead. Fortunately, it was a mistake,
pretty much.
But oh well.
Uh-huh.
Do you think I'm a little angry?
Not at all. I couldn't pick up on any of that.
That was 1999.
You are as calm as a leaf floating through the wind.
Well, I'm not dropping F-bombs. That's actually, Karin, if you watch my usual videos, you know, when no F-bombs are armed and they will not be dropped, that's when you need to worry. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Carrie's mad. Carrie's actually mad this time.
Yeah.
Bunny, I'm sorry about your doctor. Hi, Yiz.
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, Yiz, how's it going? Mandatory guilted me into joining him on the stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
You want to tell the story?
I unintentionally stood him up one night, told him that I was going to stream, and I didn't. So I was cajoled into joining this stream, which I'm enjoying so far.
Yiz says, I would join, but I'm busy working. And Yiz, as far as I know, the real subject today is something you haven't been there. You haven't done that. I'm sorry. We're talking about homeless. Well, we're supposed to be talking about homeless programs.
We were supposed to.
But we got a little off topic because I got mad.
Well, you got mad, and we were trying to hash out how to pay for this program, or how to get it off the ground, and so that's that brought on a new host of questions and dilemmas. So,
well, let's talk about that.
Pardon the it's the autism.
This is autism normal. Let's talk about getting it off the ground. You know, I know, Karin, you're going to hate this before I even finish the sentence. But
are you going to tax me?
Kind of. Yeah. Well, I think we went over that though. I thought we covered that issue. Did we not cover that issue enough? Would you like to go back over that? Okay. I'm going to take that as
what are you referring to?
Well, getting it off the ground. I would like to see a city or county build the first pod home, and make sure it's understood to everyone and everywhere that this is a pilot program. That's to see if it'll work, and if it doesn't work, The building goes back to being a warehouse. Everything gets pulled out of there. What can be salvaged or recycled is, and that's it. And if it does work out, they just leave it open. And this pilot program then gets replicated uh, in other cities that do have a relatively have a respective problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the pilot program building I actually have in mind. Actually, I'm going to pick on Los Angeles here for a second. There's this one particular street. It's like 3 or 4 miles of homeless camp, and you can see on either side there's um, concrete buildings. They're
Yep.
there, and they are all described as being empty because this whole area has gone into absolute economic freefall. Every
Yep.
business is gone for about a mile in every direction of
Huh?
this road. This isn't even Skid Row, as far as I know.
Nope. No. So Skid Row has Skid Row has conquered and colonized. It has expanded its territory and stretched its borders. Skid Row
Oh,
has is becoming a nation state at this point. So buckle your buckle your butt because shit's getting crazy in LA. But anyways,
well,
I I just pulled in the driveway. I actually have to return to my home and family.
okay.
Um,
Well, let
but
me run this by
it's
you first. Okay,
all right.
I'll make it one sentence. Um, Take some of these abandoned buildings, and there's several of them that look like they were parking garages. That's actually kind of perfect. Convert 2 or 3 of them into pod homes, and let veterans set 2 or 3 of them specifically for veteran housing, because veterans are willing to endure a little bit less creature comfort to
Mm-hmm.
prove out the program, and then go from there.
That actually sounds great if you can get the initial backing and get things off the ground.
It would be nice. Okay, Karin, you've got duties to attend to.
Yes, I do. And
Um,
thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, till next time, Mandatory.
Take it easy. People say thank you. Okay. Um, Troll is saying use containers 3 10 foot pods per with room for utility to spare. Um, Troll, they actually did try shipping containers converted for homeless housing in, I want to say it was Eureka, California, and that was a complete disaster. Total, unmitigated um, fire. Like half the facility was burned to the ground before anybody even realized there was a problem. It's also worth considering. Hey, DM, Olympia, Washington 40 tiny home has a 40 tiny home village. They are 8 by 12. DM, the problem with tiny homes, and this keeps proving out, is you give them the tiny home, and within a year or two, it's destroyed. Um, yeah, it's actually a major controversy down in Los Angeles because there's a guy who's doing it outside of the city government and actually specifically against the city government's wishes. He builds them, he sets them up, and then like a year and a half later, it's a pile of trash that the city has to get rid of. And meaning well and doing well are not always the same thing. Um, the tiny homes are the pod homes are not intended for families, and they will not work for families. They would only work for couples if the couple is willing to sleep apart. And I'll come back to that later. Um, for a family, pod home is completely impossible. Now, a tiny home village of families, we might be talking a little bit different situation. Um, Hi, Alpine. We're talking about homelessness this week. You just missed my guest. I actually had two guests I had hoped would make it. One of them did. The two of them and myself have been homeless. So we've been there, done that. And as somebody who's been homeless, I'm telling you, if you don't give money to a homeless person, don't feel bad. I won't do it either. And I said won't. Um, okay, Troll has brought this up before, but I had the guest on and it I'll get into that in a minute. Um, I'm going to get an Amish cabin, 24 by 36 with a loft and porch. Um, I I know of the concept, although Amish cabin, if I understand correctly, doesn't have electricity. Um, One of my dreamish homes is actually about a little bit bigger than that. I think it was 24 by 40 even. And I'm dropping in the woods somewhere, but it would have to be hooked up to some sort of power source, electricity. So, and it does work. Um, Alpine, I did not know that. If I had, I would have invited you. Um, but yeah, the where was this? Okay, since I brought the subject up, last time I had a guest, I was chastised later for ignoring my guest over the chat. So when I have a guest, I have to ignore the chat long enough to get through the guest. Sorry, guys. And you know I love you if you showed up. Um, and I hate ever having one that I didn't at least acknowledge, even when it does get a little bit stressful. Um, it is what it is, and I'm sorry. And when I have a guest, I'm going to have to focus more on the guest, unless there's something specifically for the purpose of the guest. Um, oh dear, did I lose my signal again? Okay. It looks like I'm all right. 6 watching, which counts for everybody, I think, in the chat. So thank you guys for keeping me up to date. Um, and Buckle, I did not know that, or I would have invited you too. I'm not afraid of fighting with anybody. Fortunately, I think this is one of those times we wouldn't be fighting. Troll is correcting me about Amish homes, and I'm actually not surprised. There's a lot about the Amish that I admit I don't know what I think I know. Um, and I know I don't know what I think I know. So that tells you even more. I know I've seen Amish with shotguns for uh, protecting livestock purposes. And I know not all Amish are necessarily living the perfectly Amish life. You know what I mean? Ah, Amish and pagans. And if you don't know, just Google it. But I'm not going to talk about it on this channel. Everybody, I'd like you to say a prayer for Buckle. She says she's been super sick the last 5 days. 2 days with 103 degree fever. Um, so say a prayer for her. Tiny homes doesn't work mostly for single adult homeless like I was, because I mean, I'm capable of taking care of a home, but your average homeless is just not capable of doing that. The plumbing, the electrical, um, cooking, cleaning, all of these things are skills that have been beaten out of them by being homeless. Even if once upon a time they were the straight A student and the choir boy or choir girl or whatever, being homeless has turned you into a different being. And I know this is true because it happened to me as much as I fought it. I know it happened to me despite the relative brevity of my homelessness. It was only a little over a year and a half. Uh, and that was all beaten out of, well, most of it was beaten out of me. And I had to actually work on redeveloping those skills. And that I remember I'm looking at where I was when I finally got into some kind of transitional housing and where I had been just 2 years earlier. It was, I was really disgusted with myself. So, um, yeah, it is what it is. All right. Buckle says, with so much government waste, there is no excuse why we have homeless. Um, I got to throw a yellow flag on that one. Some people really legitimately are there because they want to be. And if you're ever traveling north or south, well, traveling along I-5 through Oregon, and you see a man walking along the side of the freeway in a green jacket, do not stop. He is right where he wants to be. Don't bother him. All right. I've never heard of him hurting anybody. Um, but I know that there are people that have tried to stop and give him a ride, and he's actually run for the woods, apparently, at least one time. And there are just people like that out there. It is what it is. Um, but yeah, we could be doing a whole lot better. Uh, Troll, I have no idea what gin and whiskey is about. That's all the government does is waste. There's, yeah, if the government, if the federal and state governments could get their financial shit together, your taxes would go down about 50%. Your income taxes, especially. In certain states, your fuel tax would go down about 75%. And I'm literally pointing the finger at Oregon and California in particular. From what I've heard, probably Washington too. There it is. That's true. Oh, DM Foss says the homeless problem gets pushed as a housing problem, which it is not, by the way. Instead of the drug mental health issue, it tends to be, yeah, yeah, a lot of it. About half to just over half. I know it doesn't apply to everyone. That's the truth, too. Not every homeless person is mentally ill. Not every homeless person has a drug problem, but it's definitely a much higher percentage in the homeless population. Troll says small community groups are always more efficient than bureaucracy. Um, yeah, if fewer resources, they make it work, and that's the truth. Buckle Bunny says, uh, to Alpine, actually, I'm sure it's a spider bite. I'm itching the location right now. Signs of cellulitis. I'm running to the doctor. Okay, so everybody else is safe. Prayer for Buckle. She might have been bit by a spider, which if it's a brown recluse, get to the hospital. I actually guess it can't be because you're still alive. Um, oh, Alpine, I'm so sorry. And that is a real thing. Alpine was escaping domestic violence. Um, and that, yes, that does happen. and I cannot make excuses for it. Okay, we're at about the midway point. So I'm going to guess that my other would-be guest is not going to make it, and I never got a reply from him. So I would like everybody in the stream to say a prayer for Totes. He has not responded to anything in 3 weeks, maybe 4 now. Yeah, and I've not seen him in the chat at all. So, yeah, please say a prayer for Totes. Just, right. So let me talk about money first. Getting them built, I would actually rather see it be the cities, the cities and or counties build them, because it tends to be much more efficiently planned. But, let's say we put this off onto the federal government to build this plan. They're going to build it for a federal mind frame. You know, you have to have it a mile from any residential area. You have to have it 5 miles from school. You have to have it upwind of factories, on and on and on. All of these rules that always seem to come from one case in one place, one time, that's now every rule everywhere. Oh, excuse me. And it, this rule about it can't be a parking garage, for example, or it cannot be a converted building from before 1995, let's say. Okay. That's almost every building in Los Angeles that would be available, and they can't do it there because they have to start all over again. The feds are not going to start all over again, especially for relatively small, to them, problem. Los Angeles has a real problem. I think I remember, I think it was a third of the city is currently homeless. That's huge, right? Now, how much of that is some creative accounting? I'm going to let you y'all figure that out. They have, for their purposes, though, a crisis. Okay, well, rather than the feds run it, let Los Angeles run their and fund their own program. Not even let the feds or Sacramento fund the program, because they're going to put all these ridiculous stipulations. You know, we give you $1,000. You have to be able to build 4 units, or yeah, and my old stomping grounds in Sacramento, $1,000 to build 5 units probably would happen. Los Angeles, not going to happen. Again, the state will build their regulations based on one extreme outlier example that happened one time 14 years ago, on top of the federal regulations, if there are any. No, let Los Angeles do it. Let, not quite full on laissez-faire, but let them run their program. I'll get to that in a second. Pilot program, and I'm picking on Los Angeles a lot, more than I really should be. So I'm going to pick on New York for a second. New York also has a lot of abandoned buildings. At one point, I was in a position to acquire some equipment from an abandoned building. Got scooped. Damn, that sucked. But anyway, now this building is empty, and I want to say it was listed as being 500 by 500 by 10 decks. It was an old warehouse building, and that's what it was being used as when it was abandoned. This building could pretty easily and efficiently be converted. Where was I going with this? Let them build this up and test the program and test it with veterans. The first class, the first company, the first residents, the first whatever you want to call them, veterans, because veterans will endure less creature comforts and less privacy and less this and less that, less everything else that your average person takes for granted, even if they are homeless, and make it work. And then we test the program and tell you, okay, well, this didn't work or that didn't work. Little flag on the play. Because of water usage, I had in mind that we would use a gray water system, which is where drinking, cooking, and cleaning water that is poured down a sink, basically, gets recollected and used for toilet purposes to flush. Okay, well, that would cut down the water bill by about 50% right there. It's used on ships all the time. It is a good, solid, safe system. We have one example in one building where a gray water system failed. The whole gray water system goes, okay, fine. We'll deal with that later. And veterans will make it work. Okay. Buckle Bunny is also talking about her unfortunate marital past, and Buckle, I'm really sorry. I am going to make an assumption based on information, not in evidence. Uh-oh, Carrie's using the big words again. I trust it's gotten better, and I hope it stays better. So that's the way it is. Pod home would not be the best solution for somebody who's trying to escape domestic violence. Flag on the play unless there were multiple facilities. Nobody's allowed in a pod home, does not have residency there. Males, and I'm going back to some of the Japanese rules here. The way the Japanese pod hotels are set up, there's one deck for males, one deck for females, and so on, all the way up. So odd numbered decks are for males, even numbered decks are for females. The only males allowed on the female decks are workmen in the performance of their duties, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, whatever, during business hours or escorted by a female hotel employee after hours during emergencies only, and firefighters. My understanding is even the police are not allowed on those decks unless it's a female officer during non-business hours, because women in there are trying to sleep. All right. And you got this cop coming through arresting people. That's not going to fly too well unless you got a real good excuse. You got this electrician, or well, let's go to a plumber. You got this plumber coming through at midnight. That's, even for me, that's kind of creepy. And he's doing his job at that. And that's kind of creepy to me. No. Escorted by a female employee, that's a lot better. Buckle, you take what time you need. Where was I? The male decks apparently is a little bit more flexible. Female employees can transit through male berthing areas in the performance of their duties only. Otherwise, no female is supposed to be up there, and that's just kind of the way it is. Um, Unescorted, at least. Of course, and let's be honest here. How often are we going to see a female sexual predator targeting a pod home? Somebody give me crickets in the chat just so I feel better about my little joke. It's never going to happen. Or if it does, it's such an extremely unusual case that when the cops show up, you might as well send a coroner with them before you even, don't even send the cops, send the coroner first so he can be ready. Some of you actually would know what that meant. So with the male female deck rule very much in place, there's no reason to there's no reason to really worry about that too much. If I understand correctly, the Japanese pod hotels, the key for the female uh, decks will not open male deck. The key for the male decks will not open the female decks. You can leave through the ladder well all you want, no problem, but you can't get into opposite sex berthing. You can't get through that door. The employees can, and that's it. Thank you, Alpine. We all know how likely that scenario is. I've said it a million times. This is not intended for or suitable for families under any circumstances. And that's where the tiny houses might have to step in or step up. And okay, a tiny house is basically a mobile version of an efficiency apartment or a studio apartment. And sometimes that's the way it's got to be. It's also that tiny homes tend to be overwhelming for people who are transitioning. So there's really some transitional issues to address before you put this person from the streets to a home of their own. When I was first getting transitioned off of the streets back in Salem, in that veterans only program, literally the first week there I'm there, it's two guys that run it, Jerry and Ben. About a week or so before, the city of New Orleans, I think it was, announced that they had a new homeless program, that they were going to put homeless into hotels. Ben went to New Orleans, and I know he did a little gambling, and that's okay. I actually approve personally. But while he was there, he actually did the job. He did the work. And I could have told him before he took off, it's not sustainable. Just the money issue by itself makes it unsustainable. Here's some math for you. The cheapest hotel room I have ever seen was $35 a night. And this was for a really no-name hotel along what used to be, well, still is, Highway 99. Okay. $35 for a week. Well, let's round that off to 10 days for easy math. It's $350. Times 3 is over $1,000 a month. That's bare bones cheap. This place did not have cable. I think they did have Wi-Fi, one Wi-Fi router. That's not sustainable. That's fiscally not sustainable. Let's put 4 people in there and let's round it off to $1,000 a month. It's still $250 a month with one head, so one shower, worst of all, in conditions where you have no privacy. None. I've lived in those conditions when I was in the service. It just is not going to work out for 4 people, not for a full month. We could barely make it work for a weekend at a time. Oh, hi. Welcome back, buddy. So, how is this program in New Orleans supposed to have worked? Um, it doesn't, and it's as simple as that. Now, add to it the fact that this hotel was not going to be able to offer services of any sort. There's just not a place to put services. All right, you can convert one of the hotel rooms to an office, I guess, but it's just not going to be. It's out of sight and out of mind. Having it in the lobby, it's in sight, it's in mind, and yes, there is that shame factor all the way through the whole time you're there. The shame of I'm still homeless, I'm still living here. I don't have my telephone. I don't have the Wi-Fi. I don't have this. I don't have that. And if I want to use the internet, I got to use the public computer that's tied to my room, so they'll know exactly what I did and where I went. I'm not looking up porn on that computer, especially the kind that you aren't supposed to be seeing in the United States anyway. I'm not going to make a drug deal. I'm not going to this. I'm not going to that because I don't want to get caught, or at least I don't want people seeing me doing it. True story. This is from roughly 2000 when I was at my first unit. There was the local library had publicly accessible computers. Um, I walk in one day and like 4 or 5 of them are gone. What's going on? I remember asking the assistant librarian, what's going on? And she wasn't supposed to tell me this, but apparently somebody had used those computers to target children on the internet. And the FBI had come in and taken the computers to go over the logs and find this guy. And I guess they did find him because the computers came back about a week later. Um, Now, looking back, I say I wonder why they did it like that. Why didn't they just come in after hours, posing as technicians? And if anybody asked it, yeah, oh yeah, we were having some Wi-Fi or internet issues on those computers. Set up a trap, set up everything else on Earth, and use that to find the guy. Whatever. Okay. Come back to that in a second. Either way, if you're not an idiot, you're not going to be using those computers for that purpose at pod home. Now, there's a law that says you cannot interfere with the cell phone signal. I know a certain major national retailer that flouts that law all the time, but they also flout the mask law ever since one of their employees got the shit kicked out of her. Was it, or was it a straight up beat down? I can't remember. That was very, very early in the pandemic. So take it with a grain of salt. Um, with that in mind, I would be very, very reluctant to interfere with cell phone signals. So if you have data on your phone, you got data on your phone, you can go play Zombies versus Aliens or whatever the fuck it is you're doing. Um, There's not much I can do. There were, I want to emphasize this: the fewer rules possible, the more likely people will walk in the door. But there are a few rules that are just not avoidable. Rule number one: you have to be out of your pod for at least 8 hours a day. And in my case, I worked nights, so I'd be out of my pod for 8 hours, 3 nights a week. Okay, well, they make the check, and sure enough, or actually check the computer, which would be a lot easier. Sure enough, Carrie was gone from midnight to or 2200 to 0600 because he was at work. Oh, okay. Well, that's not daytime hours, but it's 8 hours. I was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday into Monday morning. Oh, Monday, he's got 6 of his hours counted for. Well, okay, fine. He was out of his pod for a few hours. Oh, wait a minute. Around 1400, he got up and he didn't go back into his pod until 2200. Okay, he's accounted for. And then Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, back to Friday. This is not to be a dick. This is actually to know you're still alive. If you die in your pod, the only way anybody would ever know is when your body literally starts to decompose. It's not because of the smell, because we, with coronavirus in mind, started talking about some modifications to the design to control that issue. It's because of your body actually disintegrating. That'd take a couple weeks to get to that point. They will not even smell you for a couple of weeks. Then what? Okay. Don't get out of your pod in a given 24-hour period. Somebody comes and checks on you and makes sure you actually are alive. You'd be surprised how often almost people actually do die under those circumstances. Hell, you'd be surprised how often people who own their own home outright and have a great and wonderful life, just one night they die in their sleep and nobody knows for a week. And then the ME can't tell why this person died, although he was 98 years old. We guess it's a heart attack, not knowing that it was actually he was smothered to death by his son. That's a case study. That actually happened. Oh, the kid was depending on the police not finding the body for another 2 weeks. That didn't happen. The idea being, well, it happened 3 weeks ago. Nobody remembers anybody being around. Well, unfortunately, they found the body before your active memory elapses. Somebody says, oh, yeah, I saw his son there about a month ago. Well, that was about a week before he's thought to have died. Wasn't that? So, yeah, that's one big rule. The other big rule is you can come in drunk, you can come in high. All right. Unfortunately, it is as simple as that, because you'd be surprised how many drunk people can hold their shit together long enough to go to sleep. You'd be surprised how many times people who are high as a kite can hold their shit together long enough to go to sleep. But if you're making a disturbance, then it's a problem. Bunny says, a lot of people I know are moving to other states like Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. And from the Moticon, I think it is, I think that's a face slap or face palm Moticon. Buckle, I guarantee you that if conditions were so good for them in California, they'd have stayed there. Hell, if I had liked California's gun laws so much, I would have stayed there. I go into that state twice a month to check up on Papa Carey's place, and that's it. I don't even go back to Reading or Sacramento. I'm afraid to get off of the main highway long enough to do that. When I cross the state line, I go straight to Papa Carey's house, or I maybe get gas on the way there. First place I stop, I take off my gun, I put it in the trunk. Because I know what California's gun laws are like, and I'm not going to test 10 years in prison just because Gavin Newsom is a or rhymes with forget. Trust me, if conditions in California were that good, it'd still be there. Hopefully, they move to these other places to try to improve their lives. On that note, the guest that you had just missed was homeless in Los Angeles for 3 months before moving to Texas. I'm just saying. He's about, and granted, this has been, I think, 5 years, but he's about to start his own tech support something or other company. He just left his basically long-term temp job, and he's getting ready to start his tech company. So go Karn. And don't tell him I said that. Too late now, but anyway. So yeah, hopefully that's what it is. I know I left California because I got a job opportunity in Colorado. I was this site manager for a farm. Well, it was a farm in name only. It was really just dirt shit lot that the company that owned it wanted to make sure stayed on the books as a farm. Something. My duties were once a day, make sure the well's still running. Excuse me, once a week, make sure the well's still running. Once a day, attend to the farmhouse, all of the related duties. I actually had to sit there and check them off. And that was it. It was this 4 hours a day, tops, doing some sort of chore. And then I was free to go. I actually was thinking about buying a place in Colorado, but it's just too cold for me there. They sold that property and they transferred me to Nevada, so it is what it is. Oh, and by the way, I can have a second job. It's actually very easy under those circumstances. Who knew? Right, I'm running down on both the coffee and the tea, and I appear to have forgotten the Gatorade. So I'm going to step away for a second. Y'all got any thoughts, comments, questions? Toss them in the chat while I'm finding my Gatorade. I'll be right back. Glory, hallelujah. Things turn up when you leave them right where they're supposed to be. All right. Well, I know it wasn't gone that long, so oh well. Fair warning, I am trying to figure out how to put chat into the stream itself so that people can, when I start transferring to BitChute, maybe full 30 later on, people can see the comments. So use a little discretion in your comments if it's something you really don't want to be seen later. I'm going to give a shout out to another channel, and I'm put a link in the description after. But it's Old World Radio, and I believe it's specifically Old World Radio 2, but it's really one channel with like 3 or 4 sub channels. Despite some tense moments between me and the owner of that channel, when I asked for help, he stepped up and offered me the best help he could. So I want to give him a shout out just for having, been not been a butthurt asshole about it. Especially since I was really pissed. Old World knows what happened. He's well aware, and rather than being a butthurt asshole about it, he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, here's what I do." He really did try to help me out, and I appreciate it. Alpine says 3 months is about how long it takes to save enough money to get an apartment, etc., for deposit and rent. Well, first of all, no, not when you're working part-time. 2, not when you're working minimum wage. And 3, not when your local economy is like $800. It was not going to happen. Basically, I was living day to day rather than month to month, and that really sucked. Despite that, I was able to put $20 away every month for something. I really do wish I could get Amber into this chat this time. I would love to be scolding her for that. But anyway, yeah, it's not going to help, or it's not going to happen without help. And it is what it is. I got a hand up from the Veterans Homeless Program, and I was able to put my life back together from there. It took me about 3 months, and then all I could get was a room, which was not really a room, at basically a flop house. But I was paying my rent entirely myself, and that was a huge difference. Okay, yeah, Alpine clarified she meant full time, and it does. It takes time. That sucks. Versus a pod home, I would have been under a roof day 2, 3 tops, and been able to start working towards putting my life back together. Of course, I will never live at a pod home myself. I'll move back in Papa Carey first. All right, we're coming up on about 20 minutes left. So get some last minute questions or observations. Some big observations. First of all, pod home is not in any way intended for families. It would never work. Tiny homes generally do not work for singles at all because they're cost ineffective. Second of all, to have a tendency to fail very spectacularly with homeless because their mind is not able to handle being in a in a house that they have to take care of. I'm sorry, it is as simple as that. Um, when it is a family, it tends to be a little bit better. And I am going to say that the compost toilets, the tiny house advocates keep pushing, also tend to be part of the problem. I'm just saying. Um, but yeah, they fall apart, and they fall apart in a relatively short period of time. Um, case study out of a city that I'm familiar with. There was a hotel there. Um, I was passing through 2016. No, it would have been 2017. The hotel is there, and I remember it from when I lived in town. I didn't think anything about it, except that this building really kind of looked decrepit. It needed paint, it needed cleaning, it needed this, it needed that, but oh well, whatever. I come back a few months later, and the building's all boarded up, and there's a chain link fence all over it. What? Oh, I guess they're rehabbing the entire building or something. Okay, well, good for them. Come back a few months later, and it's an empty lot. Well, what had happened was the owner of the hotel had been renting out to homeless people. The homeless people tore up the hotel rooms. They just straight up tore them apart. And he just simply could not keep up with the damage. The city gave him a lot of money to rebuild the building, but he just never could get it back up to that point. And after 3 years of fighting with this guy, they simply eminent domained it and just tore it down. And you know what? Based on the other things I've been hearing, they were right to do so. The cops basically had to have an officer in the parking lot waiting for the next fight. Um, the fire department had to have a truck sitting in the parking lot waiting for either the next overdose or the next fight. It was just, it was ridiculous. He should have thrown everybody out for a year and just said, you know what, you're all out of here, get out. I'll rebuild my hotel, and you go talk to your social worker about maybe coming back in a year. He didn't do that, and that was the beginning of his downfall. Okay, Alpine, no, no. As a matter of fact, I'm literally being paid to live where I live, and I have a job. Yeah, my part-time job is taking care of this um, facility. It's not a farm, but it is a facility. Uh, and I live at the facility. That's unfortunately part and parcel of taking care of this place. Is you got to live there. Um, and I have my second job, so I'm fine for now. Now, if BLM or Antifa come back, this was a facility that they were not very happy with, and they might try to do something to damage the facility. And yeah, okay, well, they're not going to get very far. I'm just saying. My second job is actually working at a factory making parts for AR-15s and M16s. Some of that may have actually come from the factory where I work. I don't know. It's a subcontractor working on one particular component, one group of components. Um, actually, we don't make them. We do the rough work. We ship them out to the contractor, subcontractor to contractor, who finishes them up, gets them ready, and then sends them to the company that assembles the gun. Uh, so yeah, no, I'm actually in pretty good shape for now. Oh, Luke, I feel your pain, man. Everybody, a quick prayer for Luke. Luke, um, he's out of work due to circumstances over which he has no control. And he's really trying to be a good boy under some unusually trying circumstances. So, y'all could give Luke a quick prayer for strength and to get back to work. Um, Alpine, yes, I'm referring to myself. I was homeless for a year and a half. Um, my guest was homeless for 3 months, and there's a couple others who have had extremely difficult times. Um, Matter of fact, okay, so we, ironically enough, have had more homeless and former homeless people in today's chat than not. Although, if we get one more never been homeless in here, we can we can tip that balance. But no, Alpine, to the best of my knowledge, nobody currently in here, or nobody in here is currently is. And I think I'm the record holder for length at a year and a half. If you can break that record, I would recommend you not try or not volunteer. All right, guys, we're coming up on about 10 minutes till. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. As Ghost Tack would say, sweeping the floor and pushing everybody towards the doors. Well, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Um, what would a pod home offer? It's more a question of what it would not offer. Um, Basic housing, access to the very basic social needs to get you back on your feet and back into real society. Um, what it wouldn't offer, I know Karn agrees with me, is no Wi-Fi. Okay. No cable TV. Yeah. If it were up to me, there wouldn't be a TV in there. Me and Papa Carey do not see eye to eye on that issue. Um, no 3-star meals, no third meal in general. Um, Absolutely bare bones basic needs. And that's it. And do so at a price point where if you're even working part-time, you're paying your own rent. Yes, tax dollars would end up being used to build the facility and to initially finance it for the first maybe year. But after that, you'd be paying, no, the residents would actually be paying for the facility's existence. Oh, damn it. Some other things that it would do. First of all, it would bring down the number of public drunk and disorderly because you could go someplace and be drunk and asleep quietly, right? Out of public. Public drunk and disorderly is one of the biggest um, uh, um, quality of life problems. The cops have more trouble with people being drunk and disorderly in public than anything else. This despite people defecating and urinating in public. Right? Human shit picked up from San Francisco. For those of you that seen that chart, part of the city is actually black from the intensity of the shit being picked up there. That's still nothing compared to a couple drunk guys got into a fight in the back alley. You put those up as little red um, uh, pins, and literally the entire city of San Francisco would be blood red. That's the way it is. And the cops can't do anything about it because if they arrested each and every one of these people, they would literally be triple capacity in the county jail. All right. They're rated for, let's say 100 people. Well, that converts to actually 100 people per day for every day of the year. If they arrested every drunken disorderly in the city and put them in jail, they'd have in 1 month as many man hours of detention of inmates in that facility as they're supposed to have man hours for the year. They can't even begin to try to do that. And then you have two homeless guys who go at it, and they maybe even have a legitimate beef this time. You can't put them in. It's just not going to work out. Alpine says pods sound good. Yeah, actually, it's a novel concept and it should be explored. And I'm going to throw this one out there. One, right wingers don't like it because they don't like the idea that it'll be tax dollars. Well, initially, yes. Within the first year, it will be the residents paying rent, but they don't want to listen that long. Left wingers are holding out for a tiny home or nothing mentality. We have to give them all tiny homes. Nothing else will work. Well, that's never going to happen. That's somebody who doesn't want to live in reality. And I find that on a lot of the subjects I address. I get resistance from both sides for one reason or another. Oh, please ask me about hydrogen cell someday. Actually, I did that live stream, I think a month ago. You will get a fight. Okay. Guys, I'm going to wrap this up right about here. Pod Home, for those of you on Facebook, is a page. And I will drop a link to Pod Home in the description as well and into the chat. Actually, I'm going to do the chat link right now because it's a lot easier. 100% of the posts on the Pod Home page are me specifically. I don't even have a second admin, even though I know I'm supposed to. Okay. No problem. Yeah. Apparently it's not in my favorites. Naughty, naughty. I will fix that before before I hit the rack tonight. There you are. Okay. DM says, sorry I missed your hey troll. I'm always doing stuff while listening. No, DM, Foss, you commented quite a while ago, and I know you're working while you listen in. You say that every time, bro. Don't worry about it. All right. You and Troll. And Troll with purpose. Um, and usually Luke are listening in when I'm live streaming. Um, so yeah, you have nothing to explain. Um, Link to Pod Home is in the chat. It will also be in the description. That is actually me. Fix Bayonets is not an admin on that page. If you go to that page, do not mention mandatory carry under any circumstances. Pod Home has to be completely independent of mandatory carry because the focus of Pod Home is homeless, not anything else. I will never, as Pod Home, talk about mandatory carry. I am mandatory carry right here and now. That's what the channel says. It's what everything else here says. Right? I can talk about Pod Home. As Pod Home, I cannot talk about mandatory carry under any circumstances. So please don't mention. Please don't set up that conflict of interest. All right. Everybody else, I usually close with keep calm and mandatory carry on. Today, I want to close with a thought. There really is no problem we can't solve if we're willing to set our egos aside. All right. Thank you for coming. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off.